Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with a review today of the NFL, the LA Rams specifically, just to talk about the greatness that Sean McVay has put on display throughout his tenure with the Rams. So the Rams play the Eagles today in the divisional round of the playoffs. Most people didn't even predict the Rams to make the playoffs this year just because of just the lack of roster that people thought they had, and just the division they're in. They're in a division with the 49ers, who are always in playoff contention, the Seahawks, who always give up a valiant fight under Geno Smith and DK Metcalf, so they're always formidable. The Cardinals, who they didn't predict too much for them, but they overachieved this year, and I'll kind of talk about the division more. But right now, I want to just talk about McVay and how great of a job he's done under the leadership of the Rams. So just to go through a couple of his stats, he coached for 8 years under the Rams, 5 years as NFC West champions. He has 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 Super Bowl win. And of course, he was the youngest coach in NFL history, which at the age of 30, he was that. And then he was the youngest coach to coach in the Super Bowl at the age of 33. And he was the youngest coach to ever win a Super Bowl at the age of 36. So very, very important and pivotal stats that he has, that he brung as a coach. He started off very young, and I believe he still has a lot more to go as far as his coaching career is concerned. He's been under the pedigree when he started off in the Washington Commanders with a bunch of other coaches who have branched out to other different teams. But from where he came from to where he is now, it just shows you the vision that the Rams have. So under Les Snead, the general manager, and Stan Kroenke, the owner, they have trusted McVay with this team at such an early age and gave him an opportunity. And I think that Sean McVay, well, it's not even a thing at this point. I think I believe he started the trend of younger coaches getting opportunities, younger coaches being able to um, to be able to just be seen differently, because usually people wanted older, more mature coaches or coaches that already have been proven. But with the recent firing of older coaches now, people are saying, man, let's give the younger kids a try. And McVay was under that first kind of thought process of owners giving younger coaches that opportunity. A lot of times, even when you come out of college, they say they want somebody with experience. But if I just came out of college and I did 4 years of college, then I won't have that experience. So a lot of jobs have moved to will substitute education for that experience, and I think that's what the Rams kind of did. He had experience with other coaching jobs, and he was a former player himself, so he had a lot of different experience under his belt that will substitute for that coaching experience, that head coaching experience, I should say, because you never know until you know. And a lot of times, those older coaches are not willing to give those younger coaches opportunities. And Stan Kroenke was able to give McVay that opportunity. And now they have been also very supportive of him while he had this job, to give him this opportunity to be able to succeed. A lot of times you don't have, you might have the support system for, i.e., the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones will let you do your job to an extent, but as far as being able to have full autonomy over coaching decisions and the way you use your personnel, it looks totally different in Dallas than it does in LA. McVay, it appears he has full autonomy to mix and match lineups, give younger players opportunities like a Puka Nacua, but also not only being able to give him full autonomy of his roster, they also gave McVay key pieces that he would need to be successful, that most other teams don't want to take that risk or, take that opportunity to chance it. Les Snead is famous because he had took those opportunities on players, and he even had his kids bought him a cup, I believe, for one of either his birthday or his holiday or some holiday, that said, F them draft picks, because Les Snead gave up a lot of draft picks to get certain players, and we'll talk about those players. He brought in a lot of players through the draft and through trades. You know, you have a Von Miller, you have a Odell Beckham, a Matt Stafford, a Puka Nacua, and a Cooper Kupp that these guys were able to bring in. And not to mention, Aaron Donald came under the Jeff Fisher era, which I'll talk about here in a little while. But they bring in all these key pieces that were able to help McVay and to actually help him coach even better, to put these pieces in around. Because most people say, well, you got all this talent. You really don't need a coach. Yeah, you do. You need someone to organize this stuff. You need someone to put the pieces in place to make sure these pieces fit well. Because we've seen teams that have been great, had great individual talent, but they didn't end up winning the championship or going that far. I.e. the Lakers back in 06, I think the year, this was probably 04. Yeah, 04 Lakers, when they had Karl Malone, you had Kobe Bryant, you had Shaq, you had Gary Payton, you had all these pieces, but they didn't win the championship. They ended up losing to a Detroit Pistons team who were, not favored to win the NBA championship, but they were able to do it because they had great coaching, they had great pieces around it. So you do need a coach to put the pieces in place to be able to be successful. So, but nevertheless, when Sean McVay took over the team, you have to understand that they were under the leadership of Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher was a defensive-minded coach who was on the backside of his coaching career, and he wasn't, acceptable to change. His leadership didn't seem like it was resonating with the team before McVay got there. And McVay was probably 30 years his senior at the time, but he was able to reach the players from a different perspective. The leadership, the team needed a new voice. They needed new leadership. And McVay offered that and exhibited that up in, even 8 years later to now. Under Jeff Fisher, they were only winning 41% of their games for the 5 years that he was there. They're winning 60% of the games under McVay right now. And like I said, they had 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl win. And they've been in Super playoff contention pretty much every year that McVay's been there, with the exception of a year or two. But ESPN preseason polls only predicted the Rams to have an 18% chance to win a division and a 41% chance to make the playoffs. And they made the playoffs and won a division against all those odds. And that's because of one reason, Jeff Fisher. Now, they started off 1-4 before their bye week in week 5, but they ended up going 9-3 to win that division and to make playoffs. So, but, it was an unexpected decline from the 49ers. I think the Cardinals and Seahawks were just about right, where they were supposed to be. But I do believe that the Cardinals a little bit overachieved. They were a little bit better than expected. I think they're missing a few pieces. They had a young receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr., who I believe would only get better. They need to fill a couple of key pieces on their team so they can bring it to the next level. But the Rams, like I said, with the emergence of Kyron Williams, with the emergence of Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp kind of regressed this year. I think some of the injuries are starting to get to him. But the Rams are always finding new pieces to plug in to make that team work. And that defensive line has been astonishing. They showed that against the Minnesota Vikings last week. And hopefully they can show it this week against the Eagles. Most people are projecting that the Rams won't beat the Eagles, but if the Rams do beat the Eagles, we need another conversation in regards to the Rams as far as the greatness of Coach McVay and under that leadership that he has. And most people wonder, what is the difference between Jeff Fisher and a Sean McVay? Now, the key thing is leadership. All right, because the strategy really doesn't matter. It matters, but in the grand scheme of things, you can have the greatest strategy, but if you don't have great leadership, it won't get anywhere. So leadership is about being accountable. And if you're not accountable as a leader, it's all for naught. Any strategies that you might have, any game plan that you might have, doesn't matter. The leadership is what matters. Have you ever seen a Sean McVay locker room speech? It's powerful. It gives you goosebumps. It shows that he really believes in his players. He empowers his players. He believes in them, and he gives them the opportunity to be themselves. And a lot of leaders are not willing to do that. Just because you're a leadership in title don't mean you're a leadership in mind. You have to be a leader in mind and in action, because we all know that not only is love an action word, leadership is an action word. Show me, don't tell me, just show me as well. Practice what you preach. Being able to be, like I said, huge accountability piece being accountable. Can you be accountable? Can you take responsibility for your faults? Not only your successes, but your faults as well. And on the reverse of that, as someone that would be under your leadership, don't whisper my accomplishments and shout out my failures. Be able to be um, accountable on both ends of the spectrum. And I think Sean McVay appears to be that type of leader, and he shows that through his speeches and the way his team carries himself. His teams are always disciplined for the most part. There's not a lot of penalties going around. There's just a bunch of happiness and people being satisfied with the organization. I've never seen anyone leave the Rams dissatisfied with, other than maybe a Jared Goff, and maybe another guy too. I can't think of his name at the moment, but that was mostly contractual stuff. It had nothing to do with the locker room. It was always contractual, or in Jared Goff's case, it was just about him losing his starting job and bringing in a new quarterback. So it's going to be some envious and jealousy stuff there. But Sean McVay has been great. He's a great leader, as we can see from the footage and from the way the team carries themselves. And I'm excited to watch the game today, and I'll keep track of it when an update later. So thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast. Remember to like and subscribe to the content.